should I believe in God? In this episode of Monica Mentors, we're going to provide some Christian-based guidance for adults on how to discuss faith with your preteens. I want you to join me today as we navigate this important conversation with both compassion and clarity. We're going to aim to inspire and strengthen the faith of our next generation. I want to thank you for joining me today for this conversation. It is so pivotal that we take back our kids, take back our communities, take back our neighborhoods. Stop being so afraid to talk to our preteens and our teens about God and about the love of Jesus and even the Holy Spirit. These are things oftentimes that I feel we have left as the responsibility of the church. But the church, we're the people, church people. We leave it oftentimes to just our pastors, and sometimes it makes our leaders work a little bit harder in youth leadership groups, because oftentimes it kind of falls on deaf ear because the kids are not quite sure if it's something that they should live by. And so we need to get back to making faith in God. Let's bring the love back into why it's so important for this generation, our next generation, to believe in God. All right, y'all. So I looked up Judges 2 and 10 in the Amplified version, and it says, also, it was that generation that was gathered to their fathers, and the fathers died. And then another generation arose, and they did not recognize, understand, speak on the Lord, not even all the works that their fathers told them that they had done in Israel. And so I thought a pivotal point to kind of drive home is, what is a generation? And so according to my online research, the range spans from roughly 20 to 100 years as it pertains to a family. It is used for the history and the genealogy of a person as described in Genesis 5 and 1. According to the New King James Version, it says, this is the book of the generations with an S of Abraham. In that day that God created man, in the likeness of God, he made them. And so are we raising up a Judges 2 and 10 generation? Ones who did not know God, who did not care if they knew God, didn't necessarily think it was important to know God. Some of them even feel that God is a figurehead that previous generations talked about. Some don't even know some of the things that God got us out of, got you out of individually, because we use trigger words like, it must have been my good luck. Wow, some just happens. Stuff just happens. And so we need to help the next generation understand why it's important not to become the Judges 2 and 10 generation. Now, y'all know I love to do my research because I know some of my scholars watch me. So according to the Pew Research Center, there was a report from September 10th, 2020. And it said a majority of adolescents say it is not necessary to believe in God in order to be moral and have good values. And if you think about it, it can appear as if this holds true because there are so many religious groups, as they were titled in the research, that have been born out of the fact that you don't have to believe in God. You don't need God to be a person. You don't need God to make decisions. You don't need God to make choices. And so the report went on to say, which was a little surprising to me, it says the vast majority, and there was 85% of U.S. adolescents say they believe in God, but they prefer the term a universal spirit. Including 40% of those same young people said that they have a certain view about God, but I was surprised by this number. 34% of those same young people weren't even clear. They were not clear about why they should even know who God is. And so how did we get there? Let me tell you, when I was growing up, church was not an option. Blessing my food before we ate, especially if you was at my grandmother's house, it was not an option. I can remember on Saturdays, my mom and dad used to sit me and my sister and my brother down. We didn't necessarily want to do it, but we didn't have an option. But we used to talk about, things that it relates to how God was in our life. And did we use, certain things to spiritually impact our decisions, and then how not using those things may have put us in a position where we didn't make the best decision. Even I can remember an aunt, I'm going to say no name because I don't want to get in trouble, but I have an aunt who was wilding out what we considered during that time. But her husband at the time made us sit down and learn the books of the Bible. And so every single sphere of my family, whether they were considered saved or not saved, they weren't all necessarily going to church, but they all still had a reverence of God. They all stressed to us the importance of serving God and knowing God, and knowing who Jesus Christ was and how Jesus Christ died for our sin on the cross. So they may not have been living those words, but they did teach us those words, and they made sure that we hid them in our hearts, so that if we ever had a question, especially like when we went off to college, we had someone that we could call on when we couldn't necessarily speak to anyone else. But what concerns me is the cultural shift that we're in right now. I feel like changes in our values have shifted. The more I used to hear this saying, the worst thing that happened to people in the community is we got air conditioner. Because when we were in the house, we were forced to talk to each other. We were forced to share things. Wasn't no closed doors in my mom and dad's house. You can close it, but they was going to open it. And so then when we got out, all these other avenues that we had, it didn't seem, because we had the more choices. That's what I'm looking for. The more choices and options we had, the smaller and smaller it seemed that spirituality and God and Jesus and the Holy Spirit and learning about those things, it became less and less important, because for the most part, in this cultural shift, this is my opinion, so don't nobody beat me up, I feel like now the only time we really want to know God is when we're in trouble, or if we have a family member, or somebody gets sick unexpectedly, or somebody dies unexpectedly. Now, I'm not saying it's not important, because listen, you can go to God anytime, in any season, any situation. You can call on Jesus anytime, any situation. But you really need to understand, as it relates to our faith and our Christian belief, the Bible talked about, there is a generation that grew up that did not know the Lord. Oftentimes I hear people say, like in certain groups, I'm just using this as an example, in the Jewish community, no matter what you say, they are not going to change what they believe. And other things, you can say what you say, they believe what they believe, and they're not going to shift for it from that way of thinking. But then some of us, oh my goodness, we'll shift on what we believe in a heartbeat. And I feel like in some ways, that's what this societal change has done to us. Like, it's made it seem like, now let me be clear. Some of this is our fault, because when people needed some of us, and they needed God, they needed someone to show them the way, some of us didn't show up for them. That's the real reality. When they were in their worst moments, some wasn't there to remind them that God still loves them. And when they were in those trigger moments, when they feel like, God, why did you let this happen to me? There was nobody there to support them, to help them understand why they were feeling that way. And so we kind of pull the key out when we should have stuck the key in and turn it and put it in the ignition to help them to understand those pivotal points. So I believe culturally, a lot of this and how the culture has changed it is because we changed our attitudes as well, and we stopped caring as much as we used to. Caring should never change. I don't care how the generation evolves. You should always care, you should always love, and you should always look out for your fellow man, even those who have walked away for whatever reason they walked away. And so when you look at a situation where the word I hear a lot of time is everything is so secularized now, but have we ever explored to wonder why? I'm hearing now, even as I'm doing this, we have 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. Some of us need to listen a little bit more and talk a little bit less. Another thing that I found in there, another reason that the people are questioning why is God important? Why do I need God? Busy lifestyles. Back when we were young, it cracks me up to this day. When all this Sunday restaurants eating out on Sundays, because the majority of them were closed. Whether it was, respect to give the family time to spend together. There were people that, family going to church, hanging out with your family, eating dinner together. That was something that was real big when I was younger. But now our lifestyles have shifted so much that we really don't have time to get to know God or teach our children to get to know God the way we used to. A lot of us sporting events, a lot of the kids have, their league trainings and different things on Sundays because a lot of times they're tied up with school Monday through Friday. And then they have some different things they're doing on Saturdays and Sundays now. So our busy lifestyles, many teens have packed schedules now, extracurricular activities, part-time jobs, and they don't necessarily may know how to leave time for religious observance and participation in faith-based activities. So a lot of them just don't have time to do it. A lot of them perceive it as irrelevant, like I mentioned earlier. Some teens tend to feel like religious teachers do not address the issues and the challenges that they are dealing with. They feel like a lot of times all people want to say is try God, know God. But why? What if I'm seeing my friends doing things that are contrary to what I feel they should be doing, but it seems like it's okay? And so you got to help them understand why it's important. You got to help them to understand how it relates. How does God relate to their daily activities and their daily experiences? The family dynamic has changed a lot. It used to be mom, dad, grandparents were real pivotal. A lot of times when my mom and dad were not there, my grandparents were making sure we spent the night with them and we got up and go to church on Sunday morning. But that family dynamic has changed. We in these streets now. We ain't got time to be getting ready going to church on Sunday mornings or Saturday afternoons or whatever. Most churches do their different. We just don't have time. I got to go to work. Cost is more. It costs more to live. There's more to do. I can just catch you online when I can. And so as the family dynamic has shifted, even a lot of parents are less engaged in religious activities. So a lot of times their children follow suit. And then we got that digital distraction. The prevalence of social media, video games, especially video games, and online content keeps our children's attention. Now, some of us are okay with the video games because for a lot of us, keeps the kids out of our hands. We doing our own thing, so go in there and watch that video. Go in there and play that video game. That's why a lot of y'all spend 5, 10, 6, hundreds of dollars on these gaming systems. Because then the kids are tied up in doing something else and you can go do what you want to do. But I'll leave that for another show. Okay, so how do we get out of this way of thinking for our young people? You got to teach them to be diligent. Deuteronomy 6:6-7 says, "These commandments I give you today, keep them in your heart. Talk to them at home before they lie down and when they get up about God." It's not rocket science. Have a quick little conversation. Teach them how to say when you get up in the morning, "Lord, thank you for letting me see another day." Before they go to bed, "God, thank you for letting me, I think we used to say, "Now lay me down to sleep. I pray the Lord my soul to keep." It wasn't that deep. I mean, for us, we were just doing it for routine. So our grandmother would stop nagging us so we can go to bed, but then we carried it. Like, we continued saying it even into adulthood. Me, my sister, and my cousin who used to be here with us. We used to say it all the time. And then you consider making faith an important conversation in your home again. Sit down and talk to them. Again, it's not rocket science, y'all. And then lead by example. Y'all know this is one of my favorite scriptures I use on this show all the time. Proverbs 22:6. Train up a child in the way that they should go, and when they are old, they will not depart from it. So my suggestion for you there, demonstrate your faith through action. Let them see you doing it. Let them see you getting up, going to church. Let them see you put on the gospel music once in a blue moon in the car. You ain't got to do it all the time, but once in a blue moon. Kids right now love a lot of the artists who are considered gospel artists, but they have, a nice little flavor to their music. So the kids listen to it all the time. And then I want you to make sure that you are emulating the behavior. Because you can't do one thing and then you expect your kids to do something else. I think me and my sister, I don't know what age we were, up into, we might have been in our 30s. It was crazy to us somebody to suggest that our mama party with us. My mama just went on her first girls trip with us. And I'm 50 years old. It was just certain things that I didn't want to do with my mom. And I don't necessarily know if my mom wanted to do it with us, but it was a level of respect that we had. And so teach your children how to have that same level of respect in their faith walk. And then I want you guys to do this. Ephesians 6:4 says, fathers, do not provoke your children to anger, but bring them up in the discipline and instruction of the Lord. Now, my takeaway from that is when you talk to them about God, don't be all nasty and mean and frowning. Don't nobody want to hear about that kind of God, because they deal with enough in the world as it is. But they also need to see it in you. So don't tell them one thing and then you do something else. Like, don't tell them, we need to get out here. We're going to, talk together as a family, and then you do it one time and don't ever do it again. Kids want to, in this generation, let me tell y'all something. If you're not showing them consistency, they ain't trying to hear nothing you trying to say. That's why they're on social media, because what they're seeing on social media all the time for them is consistency. If their favorite thing is they want to talk about bunny rabbits, they can go on a social media site and get 50,000 different things that's going to consistently let them see bunny rabbits. And so that's one of the ways that you can win the war in your home. You got to start being more consistent. Sit down and talk to them. Do y'all even sit down and talk to y'all kids more than 5 minutes a week? When last time y'all sat at the table and had dinner together? It ain't got to be no little formal table. When y'all even sit in the same room and have dinner together? Well, last time y'all prayed together? It ain't got to be deep. Lord, bless this food. Me and Mick remember how we say that all the time. Bless this food. Do y'all ever get off your phones and just sit down and have conversation? Do you ask them how their day is? Because here's the trick. You got to convince them that you care about them before you can convince them that God cares about them. Because it does say, we all were, even though they were formed before they even knew, they were formed in your womb, God knew them, but they need you to know them. And so if you can't show them that you care, they ain't gonna care nothing about God, because they see you every day. They have to have faith to believe in God, but they see you in the house and in the car every single day. And so perhaps some of you guys, you're going to have to let your children build trust in you and your actions before they'll believe anything you saying about God. And then I want you got to balance love when you're having these conversations. Don't nobody want to know about the mean, nasty, angry God all the time. Tell them, show them God is love. God cares about you. And are there some times God does some things or allows some things in his permissive will to happen? Yes. But you don't let them see this fire brimstone, you going straight to hell God, because God is love. And so I want you to make sure that your children feel valued in that conversation. Make sure that you pray for your children. I mentioned that earlier. Some of y'all need to go old school like our grandparents and great grandparents. I know y'all got all these fancy titles for grandparents nowadays. But yeah, because some of y'all get on my nerves. Stop some of these titles. Just be a grandmama and a granddad. I'm sick of y'all done went from Nana to G Mama to Glam Mama. Come on now, y'all. Y'all doing too much. But while y'all doing all that, while you fixing yourself up, go in there and pray over your children. If some of y'all ever pick up y'all cell phone and just call your grandchildren or call your nieces and nephews, call your children and say, I love you with the love of the Lord. Now have a good day. Did y'all see how simple that was? God bless you. Send them a text. God bless you. Have a great day. That wasn't deep at all. And that was a prayer. According to James 5:16, the prayer of a righteous person is powerful and effective. Do you know if we just change our words, how much we would change our children? If we just change our actions, how much we'll change our children? And so you need to consistently pray for your children. If you fixing, now y'all don't cook no more, but if you putting that little stuff together, you in Chick-fil-A line or wherever y'all like to eat, McDonald's, Wendy's, Burger King, I ain't endorsing none of y'all, but y'all don't cook no more, so I got to call them all. But some of y'all children eating high end, but just bless the food. Lord, bless them as they eat this food, because y'all don't know who prepared that food. You're not doing it, but that's a prayer. And you're remembering your children, and you're even reminding God that you thank him for your children, and then that you have the money to be able to provide for your children. Because there's a lot of kids that don't have that. There's a lot of parents that don't have enough. So it's the little things. You can help them learn how to thank God for the little things. And that's teaching them why God is important. Now, I want to suggest to the generation that you continue to remind them to reflect on God's purpose and plans. They can't do that unless you teach them. One of the things my niece, we laugh about, because there are things that I do now, I did when I was younger, me and my sister, that she'll see her and her brother doing. And me and my sister laugh because we never really did that in front of them. But then it was our actions, and I guess they just picked it up and started doing it themselves. And so you can actively start doing things, start saying things, start teaching things to help the children and the next generation be mindful of why God is important. And you can do it without being super duper deep. And if you're going to have an attitude, I'd rather you not even do it. Bring them to children's church. I'll do it for you. And then just maybe, some of y'all will stop being so mean and nasty out in the world. And then maybe some of your kids will stop being so mean and nasty. Because a lot of them are mean and nasty because y'all taught them God in a judgmental way. Y'all called on God when it was convenient. When y'all want them to do what y'all wanted them to do and not necessarily what they wanted to do. And so this was just something I wanted to bring out today because, again, I am always going to support you guys in your conversations with your children, but I'm also going to give you practical things that you need to talk to the children about. On Monica Mentors, we're not leaving any conversation on the table. You won't have any excuses to not have a reference point when your children come to you or you get an unction that you need to speak to them about something. And so I want you to make sure that you go on my website. I'm on IG. I am on TikTok. Woo-hoo-hoo. It's on the Monica Mentors. Listen, I want you guys, I want to make sure, I want to give you the right one. I want you to go back and watch these videos. You can go on ebonvision.net. That's EBONVISION.com on our YouTube page. And you can go back and play all these videos with your sons, your nieces, get it all in. And then you can also go on my website, author Monica Martin Fletcher. There are resources there for you to help you have these conversations and to go back and look at all these videos. I thank you guys for taking the time to let me have this conversation with you today. It's tight, it's simple, but it's right. I'll see you next time on Monica Mentors.